How's it going, everybody? Today we're making a tier list for patch 1.7. This was the patch that was played at HRX. First off, I've been wanting to put this out for a while, but I've just been like not getting around to it because I've been once I got back into YouTube, I wanted to start making commentaries and stuff before I eased into the tier list. But now I thought it was a really good time to do it, and I probably should get around to do it since it is based on the HRX patch. I wanted to get out as much as fast as possible so you guys can use it to your advantage. Keep in mind that this tier list is more edged towards competitive play. While it can be useful for pubs and ranked, most of my thoughts and ideas and opinions are based on tournament play and the HRX, how the tournament went. But with that said, it's still pretty useful for pubs and ranked. Most of the stuff will translate. Like Koa is still going to be a good tank regardless of what kind of play it is, if it's just a pub game or if it's a scrim. So that's always good to keep in mind. And this tier list will probably change. I know not too many tank changes have been made out in patch 1.8 and 1.9, but hopefully that changes soon when the new card update's coming out. But for now, we can just look at 1.7. Even though it is a earlier patch, it pretty much has the same tank lineups and tank details, so it shouldn't be that big of an issue. Let's get started. First, we're going to start with Ashe. We're just going to go alphabetical order of all the tanks. I actually think Ashe is really, really good. She has 3 legendary cards. I don't think any other tank can run this many cards. Like Nora has Cripple and DR. Ruckus only has missiles. Torv arguably has Field Study and Thanks Grandpa. Khan is Firing Line. I haven't really seen anyone use Storm Bullets recently. I used it for a little bit, but it wasn't the greatest. I think Firing Line just gives you more. Even Fern only has Scorch right now, which is kind of hard. I wish Aegis was much better, but it's unfortunate for right now. Even Barracks arguably has Hair Trigger, but I haven't seen too many people been using it. I haven't been using it. I just think Tinkering is a better option. It gives you more range and such. But for Ashe right now, I'm going to put her at A+. My reasoning behind this is I really like her kit. I think she gets a really aggressive tank, and she's really versatile with her Fortress Breaker shield, Slug Shot for range, Battering Ram to be more aggressive. But one thing I don't like about her is her trades with tanks. She loses most trades to like all the tanks. I think Nora outtrades her, Fern outtrades her, Ruckus outtrades her, so she has a really tough time dealing with tanks. She's a really, really great backline bully, but she has struggles in the tank matchups, which honestly is pretty hard. Most of the time you are going to be looking to get on the backline, but at some point you are going to have to box tanks. And I think this is one of her glaring weaknesses, is that she just doesn't have a lot of damage. So whenever she goes against a beefy tank like Ruckus or Barrack or Khan, they're going to outdamage her. Big Shield, I think, is a pretty good card. It lets her play slower and more point oriented. However, I do think it's just outclassed. It's good for sure if you have to pick it and use it, but I'd just much rather be Nora or Barrack in that situation. Next, we're gonna go with Barrack. Barrack's next on the tier list. He is in the same category as A+. I think he's pretty good. His weakness is that he's pretty weak and he's pretty shield reliant. He uses insanely good cards, which makes his loadout like really, really strong, and actually the reason why he's so strong. Failsafe, which was a card added a while ago, people are running at 3 points, which gives you your bowling ball back at 30% health. So this means if you dash in and you get that 14 or 1200 shield from bowling ball because you have a decent amount of points in it, you now have basically 4600 effective health with the shielding. With that, you can even rotate your shield in. If that breaks and you get low, you get another bowling ball back so you can get out. So I think this is really, really strong. Barracks is really, really hard to kill. But obviously, his biggest weakness is that he has a ton of shields, and if you just go a lot of Wrecker, should be able to pressure him out. But I put him at A+ because he's not really an aggressive tank. He can't really, do much other than off being on cap. Other tanks outclass him at that, like Fern, Khan, Koa all do it much better. All like push aside with a DPS much better than he does. But he does pump out a lot of damage. You can go a self-sustaining build with Heal Station. You can go a Boots mobility build with Double Time. He has a ton of options, which is why I think he's one of the stronger point tanks. I'd arguably put him almost better at point tank than Anara, but Anara's just so good right now with the DR and the wall. The wall is one of the best abilities in the game. Next, we are going to look at Fern. I actually think Fern is a really strong character. He's probably the most aggressive tank in the game. Arguably Koa is probably more aggressive than him, but his ult is really, really good for team play. Just being able to go in and ult for your team to like commit to a kill is really, really good. It also keeps people alive, and that's huge when it comes to competitive play. Making a 5v5 stay like that rather than going to a 4v5 or losing 2 people is really nice. It's also like kind of a get out of free card. If you go in and you get really low, you can ult to like kind of save yourself. Your teammates can push up and help you get out, and then you can rotate your shield after that to try and live. So I think his ult's really good. With the current cards that he has in his loadout, he can basically get his fireball on a 3-second CD, which is a ton of damage. It's a ton of poke, especially on a lot of these maps. There's long corridors that people want to stack and group up on. So this definitely helps when you're allowed to pump out some big damage. One like example of this would be Stone Keep. Stone Keep in the keep area, you can just throw fireball and it usually hits 2 to 3 people, which is a big amount of damage. Another thing to note is that he does have Brand. Brand's 75% caught for 3 seconds on your fireball. This is huge when you're hitting like 2-3 man fireballs. People are caught really early on and can't really do anything with it. I think one of his biggest weaknesses is that his deck needs him to run speed. You don't have to run speed. I really think it really helps him out, makes him be more aggressive. So I choose not to run Rizal on him, even though he does have a Rizal card, which is really good for him. I do think that you don't need to run it, and you can get away with it without it. You are going to get feared and ulted by Nora and other CC, but it's definitely worth it. I would consider going a speed build over Rizal build if you can find some kind of mix. Like I know when the cards get changed, both Brand and Rizal are probably going to be removed from his loadout, so you could probably opt for more speed. But as of right now, I definitely think Brand speed build is the way to go for him. It makes him really strong, really aggressive, and it overall makes him a really good character. Next is a Nora. I'm going to put a Nora on S+. I think she's one of the best point tanks. Actually, no, I think I'm going to move her S. Whoops. I think S. I think S+, I'm going to save for Khan and Koa. Nara is really strong. She's probably the best point tank with the healers out right now. Like, looking at how strong Ying and Damba are, she's incredibly powerful just because of the self-sustain that she can get. She can get Rejuve 3 plus her DR, which brings her to a total of 70% Rejuve when she has her DR on. When I talk about the DR, I mean Mother's Grace. It gives you a 40% healing bonus when it's active. Rejuve does stack with this, so it gives him another 30%, which makes it a total of 70% plus 50% DR while on cap. With healers like Ying and Damba, with Ying or Damba heals in a gourd, she's gonna get healed up to full, and she's insanely hard to deal with on point. And her wall is also one of the best abilities at living on point. You can just wall yourself off. The other tank has to push behind the wall, which means he's 1, LOSing his healer to do damage to you. 2, you're LOSing everyone, so you're not getting caughted. So it's just a really good ability for point. You can also, on points like Jagfall, wall people off. Stone Keep, you can wall people off. So it's a ton of playmaking options and survivability with the wall. Yeah, she's arguably the best point tank in my books. I think she's incredibly hard to deal with, and at HRX she was a really big threat. Of course, we didn't like to pick her so much because we didn't really like that style of play. We wanted to be more aggressive with the double aggro tanks. But I think Nara is also one of our, that was our main point. We were trying to make sure we can deal with the Nara. We were always focused on not letting the Nara stand on cap. So Nara is definitely a really strong character. Next is going to be Khan. I'm going to go ahead and put Khan at S+. I think Khan is insanely good. His kit's really good. The more and more I play him, the more I think his gun and his kit just feels really strong. Firing line, I believe I heard it's going to get changed because it has CC immunity and a damage buff in it, and it needs to be brought in line with other talents. But as of right now on the 1.7 patch, his firing line legendary talent is just incredible. He has really good cards in his loadout. He has an HP card, which gives him, I think if you put 4 points in it, it's 4,600 HP, which is really good. He has Hope Guard, which is a 6% rejuve while your shield is up per level. So at 4 levels, it's 24%, which is what I usually run. And I find this to be really good, especially with strong healers and rejuve being so good. You can get a ton of value. It's also worth noting that it does stack with rejuve. So if you have Hope Guard 4, which is 24%, you can get rejuve 3, which is arguably 54% rejuve. So whenever you get caughted by 90%, it's really not 90%. It helps out a ton, especially when you put up shield to uncaught yourself whenever. It just makes healing con up really good. He also has a shout to rely on to heal himself and buff teammates. I'm going to use Stone Keep as an example. It's another good spot for him. You can group up your team and keep and shout them all, and one, it gives them CC immunity, so it's hard to engage on, and two, it just buffs their damage, so it's really, really good. Any kind of damage buff like that is really strong in the game. You look at Torv's field study, which we'll get to Torv next, but the damage amps in this game is really, really strong. It just helps the burst meta so much. But I really con ults, kind of con ult. Like, I don't know if I explained it too much, but just getting a free pick on enemies is really nice. During the tournament, the way we played con, we didn't even look to throw people off. Like, since you're in a coordinated play, you can kind of coordinate with your team when you're ulting someone, and you can just look to blow them up. So I would look to ult in safer spots where I wouldn't die necessarily, but I could at least pull someone. And when I pulled someone, I would just rely on Rock or Random or Tolkien to kill the person I was grabbing. This means I was usually going for DPS or healer, which is a free pick. Free pick making it a 5v4 is incredible, especially if you can grab a DPS or a healer right off the bat. It makes a tremendous advantage. If you can kill that healer right away, the entire team pretty much has to back up, or they're gonna just die slowly, which is really, really bad. But yeah, Con is a monster of a tank, and I think he's S+ for sure. Next we have Makoa. Makoa is S+ as well. His kit is incredible. His legendary card Leviathan is arguably the only viable one, which is sad. Davy Jones is kind of a meme, and half shell doesn't work half the time because it's kind of bugged. It's bugged because I believe Barrier Reef 5 doesn't reset all the time, so when your shield gets broken, instead of getting 10 seconds off, you only get 5 seconds off because it gets broken too fast. It's really buggy, so I think Leviathan's just a stronger talent, and it makes his ult incredibly strong. His ult's already strong, but the counters to Koa ult was CC, so when Koa ran into you, you wanted to like fear him or lift him or do anything to stop him from running in at your team, but now he's CC immune, so you can't do any of that to him. I think what makes Koa so strong is just the hook potential. Getting a hook in any like competitive play is really, really strong. It's a free pick if you can land it. It is pretty telegraphed when you're going for a hook, but sometimes it's just hard to play around it. No other character has an ability like that, which makes it difficult to play around. In competitive play, pretty much whenever you get a hook, if they're not a tank, if you're hooking like a squishy, they're most likely going to die, which is going back to that 5v4, it's a pick, and it's a huge advantage for one team. Adding on to that, he has a really good shield. He's allowed to move with it and spin with it, which is really, really good. Especially if you're running mobility decks from him, you can use Surf 4, Surf 5 to just put your shield up, Surf 5 out of there, and you're pretty much set to go. It makes it pretty hard to deal with him and kill him. His biggest thing is his ult, like I was saying before. Since the hook is kind of telegraphed, you can usually punish a Koa if they miss hook pretty easily, and he'll take a ton of damage for it. However, if he does have ult for the mid, it makes it much more harder because he's more willing to go in and not care for how much damage he's taking, knowing that he's just going to pop ult and keep going after that. I think his ult gives him 11k HP or something insane like that, so it's definitely a really strong ability and probably one of the main reasons why Koa is so strong. I think hook is definitely it's a really good ability. I think it's on a long CD, and I think it's in a good place because it's decently hard to hit. But I do want to say I think his ult does need a nerf. For Leviathan, the card needs a nerf. Just having that CC immunity on his ult's just way too good. It makes him way too aggressive, and you can make a ton of plays with him by just knowing that your tank's never going to die, and you just keep pushing and making space for your team. Next up is Ruckus. I'm going to put Ruckus at S-. I think he's an insanely good tank in terms of his damage output. His survivability is pretty good. Even though he's a squishier tank, he has the most mobility out of all tanks in my opinion. He has 2 dashes all the time on a 5-second CD, and with fuel reserves you can usually boost this up. Fuel reserves being the card where you can increase the dash distance. I usually run this at 1 or 2 points. I don't put too many points into it. I know Tolkien ran it at 4 for his mobility. He really liked how far his dashes could go, and you could be more mobile and make more plays with that. He's an okay ult. I think his ult's pretty good when you in competitive play because you can coordinate stuff with it. You can know when your team's pushing, so you can push in with your ult, and you're not gonna get blown up right away because you're ulting and you're the only one shooting, so everyone's looking at you. So his ult's much better. It can combo with things like Fern ult. You can shield it. It just does a ton of damage, which is something that you always have to worry about. You can't really sleep on Ruckus ult. But his missiles, Rocket Barrage just gives him way too much damage and poke. They have no fall off, which is really, really good, meaning you can sit back across the map and almost just shoot missiles at someone, and it still does 500 damage if you hit both of them. So his kit's really good. He just has a high damage output. He's really beefy because of his mobility and his shield. If he lost his mobility, I think he'd be an easier target to kill. But since he has so many dashes and you can dash off like high ground to go further, it makes him a really hard target to kill. Next we have Term. Term is a weird one because he was banned for HRX. I'm not putting him in A, sorry. I don't really know what I want to do with him because I know you guys want me to include Term because you guys do play him in pubs and ranked, so I'm probably going to do that. But I will say I haven't played Term in a while, and I also haven't like scrimmed against it either because Term was banned for the longest time. But when Term was unbanned, he was a menace. I thought Term as a character is really good. Whether you go Undying or got the name of the blast one that does 350, Calamity Blast. I think it's pretty good. I think both of the legendaries are viable. One gives them a little more poke option, the other one gives them more sustain to be on a point tank. Personally, I prefer Undying. I usually go an Undying build with Nimble and Rejuve 3 and just be really hard to kill. His Symphon is probably the best like shielding mechanic in the game. It just absorbs an insane amount of damage. It absorbs spits. It absorbs Sarasol. It's really, really good. You can even like in competitive play, if a BK is ulting or a Drogoz is ulting, you can Symphon over them to keep them up during their ults. So there's just so much you can do with Term. You can save your teammates. It stops dives. The reason why I think Term is probably S or even S plus is that if he was in the meta for HRX, I definitely believe that he would change it drastically. I think the amount of aggression that was coming out would probably be less, and I think Nora was also really, really strong because she was arguably the best point tank. And if Term was there, he could probably contest her, and that means Nora's pick rate would probably go down, or like not pick priority, I guess is the right word. It would definitely go down compared to what it was at then. Just because Term could kind of counter her and do exactly what she did on point. But since he wasn't there, it definitely made Nora stronger. But I think Term is really good. He has really good loadout cards. He has good HP card. He has good Resil. He has the card that gives him extra Rejuve when he's low, which is really, really helpful, especially when you have Rejuve 3 and that card at 4 points. I believe it's 50% Rejuve when you're under 50% health. So it's really good. And you can always uncart yourself with the Symphon, so that's even a stronger point for him. The one thing that I do think Term lacks is he lacks a good caught. Most of the time I never go caught on him just because the cauterize is going to be so bad. Like you only get to swing on the tank, which is Nora, and she's going to most definitely probably have Rejuve and her DR on, which is going to negate your comp most of the time. So I'd prefer to go Nimble and just get more value out of having Symphon and move faster. Since you are a melee character, you do want to be faster than everyone else to catch up and do damage. But that's I think that's his glaring weakness. He does lack a lot of caught, so if the other team does have a lot of healing, that might be an issue for you. But other than that, I think he's a pretty strong character, and I would put him at S, just next to Nora. Next and last is Torvald. I'm going to go ahead and put Torvald at S. I think he's another strong character. At HRX, we had difficulties dealing with him and playing with him. I'm not really sure why, but when played correctly, he can definitely shield a lot of damage from tanks. If you don't have enough wreckers on your team, and what I mean by that is in competitive play, most teams went, let's say Cassie, Leon, and Vivian for like shield break, which because they have innate cots in their deck, like Leon has Death and Taxes, Cassie has the Impulse card, Kinetics, which gives her cot. Even Talus, for example, is another good one who has Antediluvian, which is 75% cot and is SMG, which is really good. It's all good because you can go Wrecker on top of the cot, which means you basically have both, the best of both worlds. So it allows you to get Wrecker earlier on and break their shields. Fern, sometimes I even win Wrecker because he is Brand, so you can go Wrecker to help deal with the personal shields from Torv. But if you drafted a comp that doesn't have enough Wreckers like that, it makes it really difficult to deal with the Torv shields. And usually you get out-sustained just by the Torv shields, or you get dove by like a Cassie that just Torv pocketed and you can't really deal with. But overall, if you do have a lot of Wreckers, I think Torv's easier to deal with, but even then you still have to draft correctly to deal with, and I know in pubs it's probably a nightmare just facing like a Torv Andrew or something. I actually think his ult is pretty weak, but other than that, his shield's really a really good card. It's good utility. You can save people, you can enable them to go in, you can shield your tanks. I would also say he has a really good silence. I think his silence is one of the better abilities in the game. You can silence flankers like Xin, for example. Whenever Xin tries to go in, you can silence him, and he can't billow, he can't reflect, he can't dash, so it makes it easier to kill flankers like that. Even Eevee, when she's blinking in, you can stop her from blinking out. So you just silence her and she can't ice block, and she's a really squishy target. So usually you can coordinate that with your team and get picks that way. Characters like Andro too, you can stop his dashes, even though he kind of just punches to reset it. But he's a pretty strong character. I think his shielding is what makes him really good. And if the card changes do go through, and a lot of these record cards are innate COT builds, such as Brand, Kinetics, and Death and Taxes are removed, I think Torv's probably going to be even stronger. So he probably needs something done to his shield to make this harder to deal with. But if you can't get the early record and the early COT online, it's going to be a nightmare to deal with, especially with how strong Ying and Damba are. They pump out a ton of healing, which is the reason why you want to get these COTs online early, so you can go record to deal with the Torv as well. But that's pretty much it. Hope you guys enjoyed the tier list. I've been trying to put this out for a while. Hope you guys learned something. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments, and don't forget to drop a like and a sub. I appreciate it, and I'll see you guys next time.